Welcome to ReneEnergy.com on YouTube, the hub for all things renewable energy and sustainability. Our channel is dedicated to bringing you the latest innovations and insights in green energy, including cutting-edge developments like green hydrogen. Whether you're a sustainability veteran or just beginning your journey, we have something for everyone. Join us on this channel to explore inspiring projects for a sustainable tomorrow. We bring you the latest in renewable energy, sustainability, and cutting-edge technologies. And don't forget, for more in-depth information and resources, visit our website and subscribe to our newsletter for the latest updates and exclusive content.
It might sound like semantics. After all, aren't regulations and standards just two sides of the same coin? Both are rules, right? Wrong. Confusing the two can stall your project before it even starts. It can derail permits, jeopardize funding, and alienate key partners. Understanding the difference between these two is not just helpful, it's essential. Let's start with regulations. Regulations are legal requirements. They're enforced by governments, national, regional, or local. If your green hydrogen project doesn't comply with regulations, you can be fined, shut down, or even banned from operating. Regulations are non-negotiable. They cover everything from environmental impacts to zoning laws, from labor conditions to safety protocols. For green hydrogen, regulatory oversight often kicks in at the earliest stages. Want to build an electrolyzer facility? You may need an environmental impact assessment. Want to transport hydrogen gas through a pipeline or deliver it in tanks? You'll need to comply with transportation laws and safety codes. Want your hydrogen to be labeled renewable so you can access incentives or trade certificates? You may need to comply with legal definitions laid out in policy frameworks like the EU's Renewable Energy Directive or the US Inflation Reduction Act. On the other side, we have standards. Standards are not enforced by law. They are developed by industry groups, technical committees, and international organizations to define best practices, performance criteria, or common language for technologies. They are voluntary until they're not. That's the tricky part. While you won't go to jail for not following a standard, you might find your hydrogen rejected by the market. Your safety procedures might be deemed insufficient by investors. Your infrastructure might be incompatible with global supply chains. In many ways, standards function as the invisible scaffolding of trust that makes modern industries work. In the green hydrogen space, these standards touch every part of the value chain: design, production, storage, distribution, and usage. Take ISO 14687, for example. This standard defines the purity levels required for hydrogen to be used in fuel cells. If you're planning to supply hydrogen for mobility applications, like fuel cell electric vehicles, you'll need to meet this standard, or the hydrogen simply won't work in those engines. No one's forcing you to meet it with a legal penalty. But practically speaking, ignoring it means your product is unusable in critical markets. Or consider IEC standards for electrolyzer design. These technical standards ensure safety, performance, and interoperability. Ignoring them won't result in a fine, but it may disqualify you from winning contracts, obtaining certifications, or being listed as a qualified supplier by major infrastructure players. So what's the big difference, really? Regulations are rules you must follow. Standards are guidelines you should follow, but not following them can still have serious consequences. Regulations are enforced by governments. Standards are shaped by industry consensus. Regulations keep you legal. Standards keep you competitive. Now here's where it gets even more interesting. Sometimes, standards become part of regulations. A government might adopt ISO or IEC standards into its legal framework. In that case, what was once optional becomes mandatory. This is especially true in rapidly evolving industries like hydrogen, where governments don't want to reinvent the wheel. They rely on standards bodies to define technical criteria and incorporate them into law. This interplay between regulation and standardization creates a gray zone that confuses many developers. You might think you're compliant because you're meeting national regulatory requirements, only to realize that financiers, insurers, or off-takers expect you to adhere to additional voluntary standards. Or you might build a project according to older guidelines, only to discover that new standards have been published that change the game for certification or export eligibility. Let's break this down in a real-world scenario. Imagine you're building a 20-megawatt green hydrogen plant. You've secured land, permits, and grid connection. You meet all local regulations. But you're also aiming to export green ammonia derived from that hydrogen to international markets. Suddenly, your buyer requests a full certification under Certif High, an EU initiative that uses ISO standards to verify the renewable origin and emissions profile of hydrogen. Your project, while legal at home, might not be acceptable abroad without adherence to these standards. That's why smart developers think beyond the legal minimum. They anticipate the standards their customers, investors, and partners expect, even when those standards aren't mandated. Doing so reduces risk, improves bankability, and opens doors to premium markets. There's another angle here. Regulatory frameworks vary significantly across jurisdictions, but standards often have global reach. A developer in Kenya or Australia might face very different permitting timelines, but both could align with the same ISO or IEC standard to ensure compatibility and market access. This is a huge advantage for companies seeking to scale or export across borders. Uniform standards bring predictability. They act as bridges between regions with different rules but shared goals. The most successful green hydrogen developers today treat voluntary standards like mandatory blueprints. Not because the law tells them to, but because the market rewards them for doing so. In fact, major financiers are increasingly requiring projects to meet both local regulations and global standards before releasing funds. It's no longer enough to be legal. You have to be aligned with best practices. Think of it like building a skyscraper. Regulations make sure the building doesn't collapse or violate zoning. Standards make sure it's efficient, insurable, and desirable to tenants. You wouldn't want to rent space in a legal but subpar building, and investors don't want to fund legal but unstandardized hydrogen projects. This distinction is even more important as green hydrogen scales up. With larger projects, multi-stakeholder consortia, and more international financing, the bar keeps rising. Stakeholders want assurance. Following regulations gives you a license to operate. Following standards gives you a license to succeed. It's also worth mentioning how regulations and standards evolve. Regulations often lag behind technology, reacting to changes after they become mainstream. Standards, on the other hand, tend to lead the charge, defined by engineers, researchers, and early adopters who see the next wave before it hits. If you want to future-proof your project, following the latest standards is your best bet. Now let's talk timing. Regulations often apply at specific points, like during environmental review or grid connection. But standards apply throughout the project lifecycle. They influence design, procurement, construction, operation, and even decommissioning. Adopting strong standards from day one means fewer redesigns, smoother audits, and faster execution down the line. So what should you do as a green hydrogen developer? First, map out all the regulations you must comply with. This includes local permitting, national energy policies, safety laws, and environmental rules. Engage early with regulatory authorities to avoid surprises. Second, identify which standards are most relevant to your technology, market, and business model. These could include ISO 14687, ISO 19880 for fueling infrastructure, IEC 62282 for fuel cell systems, or sector-specific guidance from organizations like DNV or IRENA. Third, make standards part of your value proposition. Mention them in investor decks. Include them in procurement specs. Align with them in your engineering and construction workflows. This will not only de-risk your project, it will signal to stakeholders that you're operating at a world-class level. Lastly, stay proactive. The hydrogen space is evolving fast. New standards are being published, updated, and harmonized globally. Regulations are catching up, but slowly. Subscribe to industry bulletins. Join technical committees. Talk to certifiers. The developers who stay one step ahead on both the regulatory and standardization fronts are the ones who will win in this market. In conclusion, regulations and standards are not the same. Regulations keep you legal. Standards keep you credible. Both matter, but knowing the difference and using them strategically is what separates amateurs from professionals in the green hydrogen space. So don't wait for someone to tell you what to follow. Build smarter, plan deeper, and let your project set the standard for what's possible.
Thanks for tuning into the ReneeEnergy.com YouTube channel. We trust you found this episode enlightening and motivating. There's a world of innovation and opportunity in sustainable energy, and we're delighted to share this journey with you. Stay in the loop with the latest on renewable energy and sustainability by visiting our website and subscribing to our newsletter. Your support is immensely appreciated, it's truly invaluable to us. Don't miss our next video on new trends in renewable energy. Follow us on social media for the latest updates. Enjoyed the video? Like, subscribe, and share for more green insights. Thanks for watching.